We go 3, 2, 1. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're at in the U.S. and around the world. Thanks for joining us today. And in the U.S., you know, it's a special day for all Americans, but actually people all over the world because they were involved in this all over the world. And we want to give this was the day we were attacked on September 11th. Many people died, and we just want to honor all those people who died. Also, our service to all the police and special people who tried to rescue everybody that day. And just a minute of 11 seconds of silence before we begin the show. So again, our respect to everybody that passed away and their families on September 11th. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for all the wishes on Facebook. You guys are fantastic. We have a lot of friends around the world. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo, and this is Baseball Outside the Box. Before we begin, just want to ask all our listeners, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to get this show out. Because you listen and you subscribe and you forward it to many people, we want to thank you. But I also want to thank you and ask you one thing, and that is go to YouTube, Peter Caliendo, hit the big red button, subscribe. That helps us get the show out even more. And more importantly, if you love the shows, there's over 100 of them already just on YouTube. If you love them, forward them to all your friends, whether it's players, coaches, or parents, anybody in the game of baseball, because we cover many different topics with experts in the U.S. and around the world who love to challenge the status quo. And don't forget, the audio will be also on baseballoutsidethebox.com. That's our podcast audio. And that's been going on for 3 years now. So we're glad that you joined us there too. Today, it's fitting, September 11th. We've got first of all, a paisan, a good Italian American, and not only that, but also a person who's been with Team USA for a long time, gold medalist in 2000. John Fierro was with the Phillies, the Cubs, and the big leagues as an athletic trainer. He's with Athletico. He's an athletic trainer with Athletico, but also handles a lot of business development, new areas that they start in. He's been in the game a long time. He's been taking care of athletes for a long time. I've seen him in many different countries when Team USA competes. First-class individual, Italian-American. Let me welcome my good friend, John Fierro. What's up, Johnny?
Thank you, Peter. That's very nice of you. And yes, paisan all the way.
There you go. Well, you're a very humble person because every time I meet you, you're nice to everybody, as humble as they can be, but you've done so much in the game. I think it's fitting enough. Obviously, September 11th, I think it's fitting enough to start with that and ask you, I know where it's at that day. I had just started the day before an international company to take teams. Everybody knows Caliendo Sports International take teams around the world for international competition. Then I woke up that morning and turned on the news, and then September 11th hit. Those were very difficult times, not only from the business side, but, that was easy for me as far as business. I'll get over that, but all the lives that were lost, not just American lives, because there were lives from all over the world in those towers and in the planes, and people, as you said eloquently on your Facebook page, people packed their bags to go on a trip that day. They were going to see families, all of that. Give us your perspective and what you were doing also on that morning.
Well, on that particular morning, I had recently just opened a new business, Accelerated Rehab and Fierro Sports Training. So I was still training a number of different pro athletes at the time, plus we were doing the PT. We were 1 year into it. So I was like a normal person getting ready for a day at work. Got up and I do a little workout before I go. Went in to get my breakfast, turned the TV on, and I saw this. And like everybody else, the shock factor hits you right in the gut. But on a personal level, I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey. A lot of family, Italian family, back there. Two cousins were police officers. One had been retired, I believe, at that time, but the other one was still active. And a number of friends in New York City. So my ties to the area were pretty strong. I watched those towers built from ground up as a kid. And it was a kick in the gut because I marveled at those towers as a kid. Subsequently, every time we went downtown or whatever, it included a stop there. And again, personally, wondering how many of friends and I knew there wasn't any family there that day, but how many friends were going to be involved and families impacted. So it shook me up pretty well.
Yeah, I think it shook the whole world up. And,
Yeah.
think about all the great heroes. I remember the young man on the plane, who said, let's get him,
Right,
and
right.
then a lot of people followed. I mean, what it must be like to be in that situation, none of us could ever know.
Can't.
Or all
No.
the firemen who went up the towers, right? I mean, they're going into
Yeah.
fear,
Yeah.
not knowing what's going to happen, just incredible. It's impactful. I mean, all these years, it's still, and I think the right term for a lot of people in America is, we haven't forgotten, and that's the most important thing.
Correct. Yeah. And, fortunately, unfortunately, reminded of this day every year and fly the flag outside on your flagpole. Another side note that kind of kicks in the memory, Christina Taylor Greene was born on this day. The same day as 2011.
Wow.
And that's Dallas Greene's granddaughter. And of course she was killed in that shooting in January 10 years later. But it also kicks in a memory of her and prayers for the Greene family every time this time of year rolls around.
Absolutely. The great general manager with the Chicago Cubs. Speaking about that, so the folks know, I mean, you've been involved in a lot of different things, 1990 All-Star game, the 1989 Cubs divisional playoffs. You were mentioned, which I think is a great honor. We're going to get into some of this as we talk, in the Hall of Fame speeches of Andre Dawson and Ryne Sandberg. But before we start, I wanted our people to know that. But before we start, I want to give young people out there who are possibly going to get into the business, into this profession, how you started, the background a little bit, what it takes to be, because everybody hears you went to the big leagues, 14 years. Well, you didn't start in the big leagues. And also the difference maybe nowadays, what young people will be going through compared to maybe when you went through it.
Right. For me, it started, obviously I had a love of sports since I was a kid. Everybody kind of grew past me. I'm pretty much the same size I was now than I was back then. So playing sports probably wasn't in the cards for me, and I realized that pretty early. So I wanted to be around teams. I wanted to try to do something to stay involved with sports. So started with equipment, just helping high school basketball teams and everything with equipment, and then moved into the sports medicine type of thing. Went to Shippensburg University after high school and got what they call a work-study scholarship to be a student athletic trainer, which basically became a way to pay for school. But I really started to enjoy it, and I enjoyed what I was doing. From there, I transferred to Virginia Tech and just got, by the grace of God, lucky. I went down there. My best friend was playing baseball on their baseball team. Went down to visit him, fell in love with the campus, said, I got to come here. So I went into the athletic training office there, said, look, I'm a student athletic trainer. I'd really like to transfer here to Tech. Is there any way I can hook on here? And the guy smiled and he said, come with me. Took me upstairs to the football coach's office, Jimmy Sharp at the time, and said, hey, this here Yankee boy wants to transfer down here. At the time, they only had two student athletic trainers for the entire football team.
Wow.
And this gentleman, Eddie Fierro, said, I'd like to bring him in if it's okay. And I'll never forget the words. Jimmy Sharp came from the University of Alabama under Bear, looks at me and goes, boy, this is your lucky day. I said, okay. He said, I'm going to give you just a partial scholarship to come down here and see what you can do. And if you pass the test over the first quarter, then I'm going to give you a full ride.
Wow.
And I immediately went, I'm here, sign me up, and transferred that next semester, and then finished out at Virginia Tech. Blessed to have been taken care of there. While I was there, Bob Humphreys was the baseball coach, ex-major league guy.
Mm-hmm.
And a gentleman, another student trainer named Tommy Bell was there, and he had worked rookie ball for the Phillies.
Mm.
And they had an opening in rookie ball. So Coach Humphreys said, hey, I got a guy. Called the Phillies. And they called me and said, we'll give you $600 or $400 a month and $6 a day meal money to go to Auburn, New York, in the New York Penn League. And I sat there and thought, it's a good summer job. Okay.
Yeah.
So I went up there and, that kind of got things started. Now, that's kind of how you get it started in teaching, or if you want to go into how do we get into this.
Mm-hmm.
Starts at the high school level, maybe even at the college level, develop that love for sports medicine. I've seen a lot of people, ex-athletes, get injured and not be able to play again, but still want to be in it, turn around and go into sports medicine, same
Sure.
type of thing. So there's a number of routes you can go, but I would suggest you start early, and just see how it flows.
Yeah.
I had no idea. My degree is in radio and television broadcasting.
Oh, wow.
Okay. That's where I was going to go. I really wanted to do that. I had no idea that this course would take me that way.
Yeah.
As it turned out, that was 77, 78. Went to rookie ball in Helena, Montana. And it was then started to develop a real interest in baseball, because obviously I was a football guy. And that's the first team. That's where we met Ryne, Sandberg. We had Ryne, we had Bobby Denier, we had George Bell on this team, Ed Hearn, a number of different people.
John, let me ask you, what do you think? I'm curious about this. The times you came up, obviously, and now, medicine is, I think it's sped up, obviously. There's new techniques, new areas. Yeah. The difference now in becoming an athletic trainer, like you said, start young and build up. What are the differences? Pretty much the same, or is there more research, more education?
Yeah, I would say my son's an athletic trainer now. Mm-hmm. He kind of followed the footsteps, if you will. And I would say it's probably more rigorous to go through now. There's a number of different requirements that weren't there. You got to remember, back in those days, the Athletic Training Association was just getting started.
Yeah.
And I think my certification number was 114. Okay. So it's like 114th to be certified. And now they're in the thousands.
Right.
So it has evolved so much through the years. The requirements for research and development and that type of thing are much, much more and much, much harder. Unfortunately, I think the expectations are much higher. I mean, when I was in it, it was a standard 12 to 14 hour day. That type of, you've been in baseball, you know what it's like.
Mm-hmm. And your hours are even longer.
Yeah. So just to see the toll on these young kids, I see it on my son. It's a bigger grind. That being said,
talk about that, because you got to prepare. You got to get there early, prepare, right?
Yeah.
Your last one out, probably.
Yeah, first one in, last one out. That's the credo. Basically, we're there like for a 7 o'clock game at night. We're there at noon.
Yeah.
If you want to do anything yourself, like I was a runner back then, so I'd get there at noon. I'd go run for an hour, and guys would start trickling in at 1:30. Some of them just to get out of the hotel or
Yeah.
get out of the apartment, whatever. Funny story. Mitch Williams, back in the day, at spring training, we would get there at 6:00 every morning. And when we got him, the first day I rolled in, he was literally laying outside the front door at Fitz Park.
Hmm.
I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I just like to come early. So I said, what time did you get here? He said, 5:15. Where were you?
Wow.
I'm like, dude, I got 14 hours ahead of me.
Yeah.
Okay. You get to go home right at 1:30 or whatever. I got 14 hours. I'm getting here at 6 if you like it or not.
That's
So again, I asked him one time, I said, why are you so early? He said, because I want the media to know I'm the first guy here.
He had a plan.
Yeah. And it's like, you can slip me $5 or something and I'll tell the guys you were here at 5:30 or whatever. All right.
Right.
You don't have to be here. So at any rate, it is long hours. And I tell people that's the expectation. Unfortunately, the expectation is you're their property. Your life is theirs in whatever sport or whatever situation you work in. You've signed up to commit to that, being, quote, totally available 24/7. And that includes the off season.
And that reminds me, we always tell young people, because everybody's got a goal, obviously. Their goal might be high school, maybe, but maybe their goal is to start in high school and they want to really progress, get to the big leagues. That's their ultimate goal. We always tell young people, do the best that you can do at that job you have right now.
Right.
Because that'll help you progress, hopefully. But here's what I want to ask you. What does young people, what does it do? What do you have to do to progress at a higher level? Why do guys move up and certain guys and gals don't move up?
It used to be keep your mouth shut and your nose down and just nose to the grindstone. But the primary portion of that was keep your mouth shut. Okay. There was a difference there with Dallas Green, because Dallas Green did not like people who kept their mouth shut. He wanted everybody's opinion and he wanted it uncensored or whatever. But if you're a young person coming up and if you're a hard worker, you're going to progress, period. If you think it's going to be given to you, it's not going to happen. There is so much work involved, and my hat's off. It's one thing to be on a professional level. It's, quote, everybody's goal. And things are easier up there. There's a lot of things done for you up there. My hats are off to the high school athletic trainers, because these kids are getting paid nothing. And they're literally there from 6 to 9 every single day.
And they've got multiple sports.
Taking care of 10 different sports and everything. And it takes a special person to commit to do that type of thing. You have to really have a love for sports medicine and a love for helping kids. So working your way up from that, in my particular situation, it was step at a time and don't give up. 2 years rookie ball, and then I went to A ball in Hampton, Virginia, and I spent 4 years there. Just wondering, okay, where's this taking me? What am I going to do here? They're treating me well and I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. But so then I set a goal. I said, okay, here's the deal. I want to be in the big leagues by my 27. So I kept grinding at it. It's hard, as you know, 10, 15, 20-hour bus rides, that type of thing. Did get moved up to Double A after 4 years. And in the meantime, starting in 1980, they started giving me that little taste of the big leagues. I was going up to the Phillies, helping out for their stretch runs, which were fun times, obviously. That's back when they were good.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did get the exposure, and thankful for that, because if you get that little taste, that gives you kind of like the impetus to keep grinding at it and work hard. Mm-hmm. But again, the main message there is it's just not easy. Okay, it's a grind. So 83, by the way, we had some of the best minor league teams in history there. Won 100 games one year and 96 the next 4. Wow. Out of 140 games. Next year in Double A, I was in Reading. I was 26 and a half going there. I was getting close to my goal. Wasn't sure what was going to happen. And through the good grace of God, on September 5th that year, our birthday.
Are you okay. 5th?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Happy belated birthday.
Sure.
Wow. Now I knew we had something.
And to you.
We were so much in common. Now I know why.
Yeah. So on September 5th that year, we had just clinched the pennant in Reading. Got a phone call, and the manager at the time was Bill Dance. He said, there's somebody in Philadelphia that wants to talk to you. And I got on the phone. It was Paul Owens. And the Pope said, "Hey, kid, congratulations on a great year there. Want to wish you a happy birthday. And I want to let you know I want you in Philadelphia in 2 weeks."
Wow, what a birthday gift. For
good. So that was on my 27th birthday. I reached my goal there. Got to Philly, and it wasn't easy. I was partnered with a guy that basically did not want me there. It's a long and hard story, but it's relevant because not every job that you get into that's, quote, your dream, your goal, works out for the best.
Absolutely. Been there.
I had a rough time for 2.5 years, I think it was. Basically having to deal with that situation and not knowing what I'm doing right or wrong, which ultimately led into this guy, this particular person, letting me go in, I think it was 1985. My goal when I got to the big leagues, again, I wanted to be a head trainer by the time I was 30. Otherwise, I wasn't going to spend 10, 15 years in assistant trainer, because back at that time, the assistant trainers weren't on the pension plan, which another story that helped get me fired, because I led a movement to get them on the pension plan against my partner, my supervisor's wishes. So at any rate, I did get let go there, and the other words that rung in my ear, and these things all flash back that night the flag went up in Sydney on the gold medal stand. The guy looked me in the eye and said, "You might as well find something else to do, because you're never going to be a head trainer in Major League Baseball."
Wow.
And I looked at him and said, "Okay, that's your opinion. I have a different one." So getting into, the type of attitude you're going to need to do this thing, I was at a crossroads. I was going to go back to my broadcasting stuff, turn to Tug McGraw, who was my good buddy. He was working for a station in Philly back then. Said, "Hey, can you hook me up with somebody here, this and that?" And meanwhile, got a call from Dick Cummings, who was with the Cubs organization, and obviously Dallas had gone over there. Dallas is the first guy Dallas hired me with the Phillies. So they threw an offer at me, basically said, here's the deal. I can keep you in baseball. And this all came from Dallas. We got a spot open in A-ball, Peoria, Illinois. Okay. I'll put you there to keep your name alive in baseball, and I'll pay you what they were paying you in Philadelphia. So I got my assistant trainer's salary in A-ball.
In A-ball.
Yeah.
Nice. Good. Wait, so somewhere to start, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was a step back, but like I always heard, you take a step back to move to forward.
In that life?
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
Roadblocks. I think it's important for young people to understand there's a lot of roadblocks in life. And
well,
it's not all rosy.
Yeah, that's the other point is circumstances happen, and it's what you do with them is really what makes them good experiences or bad experiences. So I took a step back. I said, okay, all right, I'll do this. He hooked me up with my old friend Pete McCannon and a guy by the name of Jim Wright pitched for us with Philly. And I don't know if you've ever been around Pete McCannon. The dude is certifiably crazy. One of the funniest people I've ever been around. And for that 1 year in baseball, in A-ball, it rekindled my fire for the game because I had lost it. I'd gotten to the big leagues and it's like, so this is it?
Sure.
Yeah. So it rekindled. We had a blast in Peoria. And as it turned out, there was an opening in Chicago at the end of that season. Basically, Dallas said, I'm not going to hand this to you. It's between you and another guy. You're both going to go to down to instructional league. John Vukovic is going to be the manager down there, and he's going to tell me which of you two guys deserve to be the head trainer for the Cubs.
Love it.
So obviously, again, still, there's tests all the way, and stuff that I had to prove in order to get where we go. And that's if there's a message in there, that's life. I mean, that's stuff that you're going to have to do.
And that's what, I think that's important you brought that up because, not only are you going to find roadblocks, but you're also going to work with people that you don't see eye to eye with sometimes. And that's that's a skill in itself. And you don't always have to agree. And thank God that you spoke up for the retirement program. I think we need to step up for things we believe in. For our folks out there, John, being an athletic trainer at the big league level or any level, I imagine at the big league level too, I'm guessing you're not just a trainer, but you're also a psychiatrist in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I say this not because I was one. I say this because of my fellow, especially head athletic trainers out there. To be able to deal with the day-to-day situations, not just the operations, but the day-to-day situations of having 6 different bosses, and I throw the media in as one of them because you have to answer to them also. It's nowhere what it is today, but it's still there back then. You have to be a special person to be able to, quote, juggle all that. But I always, people always ask me, how much pressure were you under and everything like that? You're responsible for a $22 million payroll back then. And it's your job to keep them on the field type of thing. And I never thought of it like that. I thought of it as being the person that anybody could come and approach for any kind of problem, be it physical, mental, or whatever. And a lot of that job is just sitting kids in the office and then, as I call it, talking them off the ledge. You know, they're in an 0 for 18 slump and that type of thing. And they're going to the hitting coach, and the hitting coach is trying this and this and that, but it's not really helping. They need somebody to blow off at.
Yeah.
And you become that person. My relationship with Andre Dawson, obviously I spent 3 to 4 hours a day working on him physically, but it evolved into a very close friendship that he knew. He and I were on the same wavelength. You know, he knew I knew when he needed a day off. He knew I knew when he was hurting, that type of thing, which, I mean, is every day. But so it's that mental aspect of it that I really think you have to be good at. And quite frankly, I think a lot of that's lost nowadays. I really do. I think there's a lot of people that just go with the flow to save their butts. And that's a bold statement, but I'm seeing a lot of that up there now, and I've had coaches tell me that. It's to me, I could never. My problem coming up with Dawson, it wasn't a problem, was don't just compromise. You know, stand your ground. If you believe in something, stay with it. Voice your opinion. And if I don't like it, then I'll say no. But I want that. I just want that feedback. So that's what I evolved into. And as the years went on, and different people came in, that didn't work well. Okay, because people came in and they wanted people to say, yes, sir, this is what I want. I'll do what you want me to do. And I couldn't do that.
And speaking about that, because I think that's an important topic there, when, you know, you're going to have players, you know, when you're making a lot of money, you don't exactly want to sit down, you know, because of, some aches or pains. But at the same time, a player, you may know something a player, you know, is injured or hurt.
Right.
At the same time, he doesn't want to let manager know. You got to communicate with the manager. That's a fine line. I mean, you got to be honest with the manager.
Yeah.
But that could also sit that person down, and it may not be a Hall of Fame guy. It may be a guy who just got up, it gets a chance now. He's starting in the lineup, you know, just starting to go. How do you deal with that?
You know, you got to read, like you said, you got to read everybody individually. And you have to, to me, it takes experience to know the difference between some guy, frankly, not wanting to go out there for whatever reason, guy sitting on 310 in his free agent year in September, and all of a sudden the little nagging injuries start to pop up. You know, you got to recognize that situation, and you got to recognize the same scenario with a guy that you know is really hurting, that may damage his career, but he does not want, he wants to finish that season and he wants to keep going for a better contract or for whatever. You have to recognize both of those, and they may be the same individual. You just don't know. It varies like that. You know, I'll go back to Dawson, and you know, I refer to him obviously a lot because of what this man went through. But Andre could not take a day off. He just, it was against his grain. And any days off that he got basically were me walking into the manager's office and saying, he needs a day off. Okay. Sandberg didn't have to say a word to me, Ryne. And like I said, we went back to rookie ball, so we were in the same brain wavelength. Yeah. Ryne would walk in and honest to God would give me this certain look, and I can't even describe it. You know, he'd be there with his fingernails, clipping his fingernails, and he'd turn over and give me a look. And I'd do one of those, okay, and walk right up to the manager's office and say, okay, second baseman needs a day off, kind of thing. So it's just different little things that you pick up, and most of it comes over a period of time.
The other area I would assume, and I'm going to let you continue. I just wanted to mention, people skills are extremely important in this line of work.
Yeah. And that's where I was going is, to me, you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't have that ability to connect with your athlete, then it's an uphill climb. I mean, you're just constantly, you can't survive on a higher level as an athletic trainer on skills. Because
I'm not sure. The other thing, folks, just think about this. I want to mention this again, just in case. John was mentioned in 2 Hall of Fame speeches by Andre Dawson and Ryne Sandberg. And this is not taken lightly because, guys just aren't going to mention you just to mention you.
Right.
I mean, you obviously had that connection. You've done a lot for them. It'd be interesting to know, you were at those events. What did that feel like?
I did everything I could to hold back tears.
Yeah.
And even more important to that.
And you had no idea?
No.
Wow.
Both times my son was with me.
Wow.
And I look over at him and he's almost holding back tears. And I just thought to myself, it's just it's a feeling. I don't know if you want to call it validation or what. Yeah. It validates the hours. It validates the time spent. But more importantly, and again, this just goes to my nature, it finally gave some recognition to not just me, but athletic trainers as a whole for what they do behind the scenes for people like our elite athletes. I mean, it really hit me then that this isn't a cool moment for me. This is pretty much a cool moment for the profession. And I couldn't thank them enough for that. Again, especially with Rhino, he and I going back to when he was 17 years old and everything, he said, no, I don't even think about thanking me. Thank you. Because this started way back when. And really was, I wouldn't even call it an honor. It's just a feeling of validation, I guess, that you did something right to affect somebody.
Absolutely.
That's what it's about.
And obviously it's a team effort, and boy, the athletic trainers have so much to do with that team effort, keeping these guys healthy. And I'm sure the tough part is, how it goes when there's a lot of injuries. Well, now let's blame the athletic trainer also. Yeah. There's that pressure. And you could talk about that, but I want to ask you this about the managers, because you've been under some incredible managers, one being Tommy Lasorda. The communication between you and the manager, you briefly mentioned some of it, but I want you to hit on it because that communication is so critical, because they could also be intimidating. I mean, Lasorda's a Hall of Famer, he's intimidating, he's pretty aggressive. Talk about some of the behind the scenes, how you deal with the managers.
Surprisingly, some of the people that you think tougher guys like Tommy are, and I obviously had one in Chicago with Zim.
Oh yeah.
Surprisingly, some of those are the guys that kind of appreciate you the most. I can't explain that.
Yeah.
I will say I had 11 managers in 11 years in Chicago. Okay. And that's a whole lot of adapting.
11 managers?
11 managers, if you count a couple interims.
I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. During my tenure there.
Wow.
So obviously you have to adapt to each guy's personality, and see what he wants. Okay. Some of them are really nice, and they call those player managers, that type of thing. They treat the staff the same. Frank Lucchese, who took over for Gene Michael my first year, I really didn't even know the man that well. after he took over for Gene Michael, he got up on the stairs in the clubhouse and just went off on this thing, pointing to me saying, I want you to know I respect this man 100%. And anything this man tells me, I'm going with. And you fools in this clubhouse should do the same thing. This is a great baseball man. And I stood there like, what? Okay. And I had no read on that whatsoever.
I love it.
You know, to me, with that much change and obviously you become closer to some than others. Zim and I had kind of a cat and dog relationship, but a high mutual respect. And on the flip side of that was Jim Riggleman, who basically said, you are the man, you are the boss, you tell me when guys need day off, you tell me when a guy can or cannot play, and there will be no question. So there was a lot of that in between. But for the most part, I got to say, we were very well respected by all of them. And that helps. You know, that just makes your job go smoother.
Absolutely. You know, the other area I'd like to cover, because I want to talk about the short season. We got about 15 minutes left. And
okay,
I'm going to talk about the short season because, you know, the Major League short season, but there's another short season that in your career came up as a highlight, and we talked about it briefly. That was the 2000 Olympic gold medal. Managing that club was Tommy Lasorda, who said that, you know, you give me the Olympic team and I'll win the Olympic gold, obviously with the team. That's a pretty short season. You know, you got maybe 4 weeks of training, maybe less.
Right.
And all of a sudden you got the Olympics, you know, 8 teams, everything happens fast. So that's a whole different scenario you got to adapt to. What does that look like for an athletic trainer?
Well, the good part about that is in the selection process, they've already done their homework. They've already, they're going to pick all healthy guys for the most part. Extensive medical histories. We do a physical before we even get started. If there's any question whatsoever, I have to project whether something's going to happen in those 4 weeks. And if there's any potential whatsoever, then he, quote, goes on the bubble. And we've got 2 other healthy guys as a backup. Okay. So that in itself kind of makes the thing go easier to start with. The hard part comes once those rosters are frozen. And what you have is what you get is what you have. And if somebody gets hurt, then you're in a scramble to get them back in a very short period of time without jeopardizing their career. Because, you know, most of these kids are high prospects. And probably the classic example of that was Pat Borders in the Olympics when we played Cuba and the guy came in and just destroyed his ankle. Technically speaking, Pat, you know, probably would have missed 6 weeks, 4 weeks from that. That's where I came in. We came in as a medical team, 24 hours, 3 days straight, pretty much, treating this guy in order to allow him to be able to play in the gold medal game. And, you know, he wasn't the fastest guy out there or whatever. And obviously he was still in a lot of pain. That's a credit to Pat Borders. But he was able to control that game with Ben Sheets in order for us to win the gold medal. And that's the scope of the international play, as you know it. It's, okay, what can you do when something happens? And you have to be ready for that.
And in that case, let me ask you this. Other than injuries, you got the recovery factor, whether it's the pitchers or whether it's players in general. Is there anything different done because it's such a short series to try to get guys to recover and come back quicker? Yeah,
you pretty much become bunkmates with the person. That's the biggest key thing is you do the same. Yeah, you do the same treatments.
Yeah,
for the most part, only instead of times a day, you're doing them 7, 8, 9 times a day to get them ready. That's basically what happened with Borders. You have to turn it up a notch in order to be able to. Now, there's those situations, if they're a prospect and everything, we had a young kid last year in the Premier 12 sprain his ankle and got back to the hotel room. And I've got 3 treatments in on already, thinking I'm going to get this kid ready for the medal round. And the club calls and says, no, you're not. Put him on a plane and send him right home. So
that's the other factor people aren't aware of is that the club has the priority over that player.
Right.
They got scouts there and everything.
And it's not just the club having a priority. It's, again, weighing that situation of a very high prospect being able to continue his career versus sacrificing for 3 days. So it's a fine line. And I think that, to be honest with you, I think that's what kept me around with USA Baseball for so long, because it takes experience to be able to make that call.
Yes.
It doesn't take knowledge. It doesn't take skill. It takes experience and a clear mind to make that call. You have to be impartial to your feelings about winning any kind of medal, and weigh the particular person's future in your hands. So
I'll talk about major responsibilities. On the lighter side, how about interesting? Because I've been around Lasorda when he was the national spokesman for the Italian American Sports Hall of Fame, but that was when I was 21 years old. Take us behind the scenes. Did you have any doubt that this particular club was not going to win the gold? And what was Lasorda like? Because he seems to be a real positive person, going right into it right away.
Well, you hit it right on the head there. When the lights are on and the camera's flashing, Tommy is the most positive person in the world, and people feed off of that. Okay. I'm sure in his Dodger years, it was the same way. People feed off of that positivity. The biggest thing Tommy Lasorda did, because we had a pretty decent team, the biggest thing Tommy Lasorda did was deflect the pressure, the media, the international stage, away from those kids. And if you ask each one of those kids, they'll tell you the very same thing. He was a master at drawing all the attention to him and allowing the kids to go out and be kids on a ball field. And I think deflecting a lot of that pressure really helped those kids out. And especially with Ben Sheets. He took Ben Sheets under his wing, and Ben was to the point when he pitched that gold medal game. I believe it was the night before. Somebody asked him, "Do you have any pressure going into this game?" And he said, "Well, no, who are we playing?" And that's kind of the whole attitude everybody had. They were sheltered so much from, and the media wasn't anywhere near what it is today. But that was Tommy's biggest thing.
Absolutely. Hey, we're going to have a little fun here, John, because there's times where I get texts, WhatsApp, Facebook messages, and my good friend Dimitri, who helps Belarus baseball a lot. He had Albert Pujols there last year come in. He's got an interesting question. It's from an international perspective as an athletic trainer, because they don't have as much as, some countries may have at their disposal when it comes to equipment. He asks how athletic trainers improvise abroad when they don't have the same access to a training room as in the U.S. That could be a whole show, but let's talk about that.
That's a great question too, because part of being a part of that situation, and the reason they choose certain people, is you got to be adaptable. Luckily, my strong point is my hands and my knowledge of how to use the hands to help a guy, versus relying on machines or weights or anything like that, because obviously you can't take a lot of that with you. So it allows you to be a little more creative and improvise a little bit more, and frankly, get back to your roots, to where you worked before you had access to all this stuff. So it is a challenge, but I look at it as a positive challenge. When my son went with me over to the Premier 12 a few years ago, he's new school. He's used to using all these things. And he got to see firsthand what it was like to get back to the roots of saying, okay, do your thing with your skills. And that's a great question, because some of these areas that we've gone to, as you know, Pete, is just absolute nightmares for, everything happens at the hotel. You're not dressing, you don't have a training room at the stadiums or whatever. Everything happens at the hotel. So you just
sometimes
adapt.
hotels, maybe, you're looking for some equipment that you might need. You ran out of something.
Yeah.
You might have to improvise with, I know, and again, I don't know what, but it could be, a splint. There could be all kinds of things that you have to improvise with.
Right.
And you got to be creative.
Yeah. How about ice?
Yeah.
We go into some of these places, Taiwan and everything like that, or back over in Europe where they just don't use ice.
Right. Not even in their drinks.
Yeah. It's like, okay, what do you do? Well, sorry guys, we don't have ice, and let's just try something else. So it's a lot. It's not just an adaptation for us, but it's an adaptation for the entire traveling party.
Hey, a shout out. You mentioned Premier 12. This is just a shout out. I want to ask you a specific question. Jake Cronenworth, our good friend. Jake was a NTIS Great Lakes region player here in the Great Lakes for us when he was 15, 16, and now up for Rookie of the Year. That'd be interesting. What a great young man. I know you were with him.
He was great.
An important thing in baseball, and you can mention anything you like about Jake too, but an important thing in baseball is getting pitchers, and I know this is a whole show, but I want to get your opinion, getting pitchers to recover a little bit quicker after they pitch. Just some advice, even for guys like Dimitri and Belarus, some advice to get the pitchers back when it comes to recovery. What should they do? Some of the things that helps them recover faster.
I choose not to look at what makes them recover faster. I choose to read them. Luckily in international baseball, they're controlled, pitch counts and all that type of thing. Some people don't, some people don't. So that's not as big a case. But you got to look at the kid and read the signs and have the fortitude to say, he doesn't recover quickly, he can't pitch in 3 days. And you have to just put your foot down and stop it. What we do in between is throw the kitchen sink at them. Most of the guys, at least on our team, come in with routines. So they already know their day 2, 3, 4 routines. We're there to help them with that routine. So a lot of massage, exercise, stretching, that kind of thing to help with their recovery. But, to me, I use massage a lot. I use my hands a lot. Mm-hmm. To me, in those situations where you just don't have access to a lot of things, that is the best tool to help. Yeah, to use with recovery.
Yeah, and I bring that up because a lot of people who are around the world are listening. Not all of them have athletic trainers, even, or and the pitchers or kids in general have. You want them to make sure when they come back, they feel okay to come back.
Right.
So what do we do? And those are great examples. The other part, on the flip side, this is also a whole show, but you're seeing, and I think it was expected, you're seeing in the major leagues a lot more injuries. At least I'm seeing the reports. Injuries are going to occur. It's part of the game. But what are some of the key areas to try to reduce those injuries that players at any level could do to make sure they're healthy?
I always approached it as, like you said, injuries are going to happen. I classified them 2 categories. One is preventable, and the other is not preventable. The preventables are the strains, sprains, and the overuse injuries. You can manage that. So, with proper stretching, proper training during the season, gearing down from the program in the off season, again, catching the warning signs of overuse and shutting people down at the right time. Those are preventables. The unpreventables or unpreventables are the breaking up the double play and break your finger or turn your ankle at second base type of thing. To a degree, they're preventable, but they're part of the action of the game is what I call it. You can't tell a kid not to run into a wall to catch a ball. It's just going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have your hands in. It used to grate me to no end to have a guy go down with a hamstring injury because I would take it personally. It's like, okay, we didn't prepare this guy enough because those injuries to me shouldn't occur.
The warm-ups are critical, I would assume, before young kids practice.
Yeah.
What type of warm-ups? I mean, those are all important to let the body get ready for especially an explosive sport like baseball.
Right. Yeah. You've got to have a proper 20-minute warm-up at least to maybe a half an hour before batting practice of kids just stretching and doing dynamic warm-up and movements that you're seeing on the big league field now.
Mm-hmm.
Just simulating the movements you're going to do on the field. Showing up 10 minutes before the game and throwing them out there is just a recipe for disaster. But that being said, you can warm up, you can do all the precautions that you want. If you're going to play a kid 7 games in 3 days, okay, he's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
He's going to get hurt, period. And to me, that's what the biggest problem is nowadays.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want you to hit on that, where our youth sports, the areas that you think are detrimental to not only the long-term development of a player, but also the short-term injuries.
There's two facets of that. And obviously we have that problem here in Arizona where it's beautiful year round. The two facets to me are, number one, you set the kid up for injuries, if not this year, next year, maybe during his high school season or whatever, his or hers, because we see a ton of softball players too. But secondly, just throwing these kids into these situations where it's just jammed down their throat for 5, 6, 7 years leads right into the burnout factor. Kids want to be kids. Kids want to play different sports. They don't want to specialize. Kids want to play with the kids, their friends at the playground and everything. Kids want to be kids. And to constantly create that atmosphere where they have to go to hitting lessons, they have to go to pitching lessons, they have to do this, have to do that, basically steers kids away from the game. And that's a shame in itself. It's hard enough to make it as it is, even to a college level, but you may have a kid that's got a really good talent or whatever, and by the time he gets to his junior year in high school, just doesn't want to play anymore because of all.
I'm so thrilled you brought that up. I want to keep you a couple more minutes here because I think that's so critical. You know, when we talk about, because I want you to talk to kids and parents and coaches at all levels, but when we're talking about kids at especially 12 and under specializing, so not only is it an issue in other areas, but the most important, I want you to address this, you're talking about higher risk of major injuries possibly.
There's no question, because if you specialize, you are basically utilizing the same muscles, joints, and the same motions over and over and over and over, versus going from one sport to another. Now you recruit different muscle groups, different patterns, different running patterns. I mean, think about baseball. It's pretty linear. You go point A to point B, point A to point B, okay? And there's not a lot of turning in between other than the bases. You go to football and there's cutting, pushing, and there's movement all over the place. Same with basketball.
Constant movement, some of them.
Yes. And to me, that develops a, quote, better rounded athlete. The guy right over your left shoulder there, had scholarships in football, baseball, basketball.
Ryne.
Because he was basically an all-round athlete, and didn't have injuries because he didn't burn out. Now, you say, okay, so what's the difference? They get to the big leagues and they play 15 years in the same sport and same linear pattern and that type of thing. True, but their training is different. Okay, so when I was training these guys, we didn't train in linear patterns. We trained, we'd go out and throw a football. We'd do pass routes. We'd do all kinds of different things, and then focus on the skill. But the biggest thing I'm seeing, with just a specialization, I do have a problem with specialization. The bigger problem I have is the overuse. Okay. And this is my
overuse of pitching.
Overuse of C, all of the above.
Okay.
This is my soapbox deal that I give parents when they walk in with their 13-year-old in the clinic.
Great. Let's bring it on.
And he's got a partially torn ulnar collateral ligament. And it's like, what do we do? He's got to be ready for a tournament in September. So, and I would tell him, well, then you're in the wrong place, because that's not going to happen. I'm not going to risk this kid's normal daily living career just to get him ready to pitch in some tournament that's making somebody else money down the road. But my soapbox is, I go back 2 years. Okay, how much time has this particular fella, youngster, girl, boy, had off in the last 24 months? And it pauses them to think, like, well, geez, Christmas. And yeah, we do take a month off in the summer, obviously down here because it's hot. So, okay, so in the last 24 months, you've had 4 months off of doing non-baseball activities. Yeah, pretty much. Okay. I said, on top of that, when you go to these tournaments, what's your schedule like? Well, we'll go and we'll play 2 games on a Friday. We'll play 3 or 4 games on a Saturday, and then maybe 3 games on a Sunday if we're lucky. Okay. And I'll look at them and say, I did this on the highest level that there possibly is with grown men, professional, trained athletes. Okay. I wouldn't even think about putting that kind of demand on the highest level athlete in the world. Why would you think about doing that to your kid? And I've had a lot of people get up and walk out, but I'm sorry. I'm going to advocate for that as long as I possibly can. People have to understand the demands that they're putting these kids through. And I've had a few of them, thankfully, I've had a few of them change their habits and say, okay, instead of playing in 7 tournaments a year, play in 3 and make it once a month kind of thing. And, it really has irked me over the years to see these kids coming in and out of the clinics.
And that's so understandable. Look at Major League Baseball. They're hesitant about playing double headers
with
these athletes. And you said it perfectly, because I think I want people to understand this. These are grown men with grown muscles, tendons, or whatever you want to say, where you're asking a kid, 11 years old, that his body is not grown. You ask him to do these things. I mean, it is incomprehensible. And our leadership at the high levels needs to really get tighter and tougher and set some standards here.
Yes.
We're not abusing some of these kids. Basically what you're saying is we are abusing players at a lot of these tournaments if they're playing that many games every weekend.
Right. Yeah, and I'll get to, well, if he doesn't play, if he doesn't go, then nobody's going to see him. And then I'll go into the reason all these things pop up now is because scouts have gotten lazier. Okay. Maybe it's financial. I don't know.
More cost effective also. Sure.
Correct. Okay. I get that. But you have to understand, this isn't for you. This isn't for your kid. This is for them. Okay. For the most part, somebody's making money off of these things. And secondary, if your kid is good enough in whatever club or high school sport he's playing, he's going to get noticed.
Especially today.
Yes, he's going to get noticed.
With technology and everything.
Yeah. Anything you do to try to push him to be noticed is going to be detrimental.
John,
that's what I tell people.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I bring this example up. I've said this before on the show. We've got an injury that happens a lot, and that is obviously to pitchers and their UCL, and it's an increase. We know why. At least we have an idea. Guys are throwing harder. But we also have showcases in the winter where our
Yeah.
kids up in the north are going down to throw.
Yeah.
And I've always said, okay, MLB, we know that it's cost effective. The NCAA, cost effective.
Right.
You know, maybe it's time for them to step in and say, we're not coming to the showcases in the winter because it's detrimental to the development of players. Hold them another time of the year, because if they don't show up, John, nobody else is coming.
Right. And that's a good point. I mean, the focus has to shift from, quote, I don't know what you call it. The focus has to shift to the health of young players. It has to, because that 0.11% of kids that make it is going to drop even farther, because there's just not going to be enough kids that are uninjured to get there, and to make an impact.
And I think it's important that we keep as many kids in the game playing the game longer.
Yes.
Don't worry about how far they're going to go, because eventually you're going to get those guys. Here's another question that comes up, and we can close it with this, and then you can add anything else to it that you want to say to parents, coaches, and players in the U.S. around the world. But this is something that comes up quite a bit, and that is for young kids, young coaches. Sometimes, you know, a kid says, my arm hurts. The difference between pain and soreness. You know, even adults sometimes, I think it's pain, but it's really sore. How do you tell the difference? How do you get young kids to understand it, or coaches or parents?
Well, there is a difference, and it's a good question. Soreness usually comes from overuse, and you're taxing something over and over and over and over again. Okay, you get on a bike and you ride 8 miles, and that's not something you're used to doing. You're going to get up the next day and your muscles are going to be sore. Your leg muscles, your quad, your backs. Pain usually comes from a single episode. Okay, fouling a ball off your foot, throwing a ball and feeling a sharp pin-like thing in your elbow. Okay, and pain can proliferate over a period of time, but the problem with pain is it's a totally subjective element of human development. Okay, pain is controlled by the brain, and some people have the ability to block that impulse in their brain, and some people tend to magnify it. My perfect example is when I did my 13 years with the Arizona Coyotes, and measure that with my time in baseball. Okay, and people make jokes. Yeah, well, this guy missed 14 weeks with a hangnail. And, you know, I got to see pain in its truest form. Okay, guys getting skate blades over their fingers or hands and that type of thing, and going inside and sewing them up and putting them back out on, or they going out on the ice. We wouldn't put them, they'd go. Okay. The ability to control pain in your brain. I witnessed that firsthand. So you go back to experience, recognizing the fact that each person is different, and somebody's pain may be somebody else's soreness. You know, but again, as a general rule, pain is usually the result of a quote episode, a traumatic episode, and soreness usually accumulates over a longer period of time, or doing something that you're not used to doing.
Well said. And John, close it off for us. Last minute thing, you know, anything with our players, coaches, and parents around the world, just some last minute advice when it comes to the game of baseball.
Yeah, especially if we're talking to parents and everything, I would just urge them to allow their kids to be kids, and to go with more moderation than with aggressiveness. Because if there's anything that's disturbed me over the years that I've worked with these clinics, is seeing the parade of kids coming in and out. And I did coach the Little League right after the Cubs, and I could see it developing there. But what you think is important tomorrow, whatever tournament, whatever showcase or whatever, will probably not be as important in the next 3 to 4 years. Okay. Missing 1 out of 6 of these things is not going to make or break the situation. So I would urge them to just keep a big picture in mind throughout the whole time. And more than anything, protect your kid. You would protect them against a predator. You would protect them, out on the street. You would protect them in any other situation. Protect them on a baseball field. It really is that simple.
Absolutely. Great words. And, it's interesting, close it off with, we always talk about prevention. You're preventing injuries. And don't wait for the injury to occur, because I always see that, that kid gets hurt, then he's got to go through major rehab after Tommy John surgery. If you could have possibly avoided it, no, there's no guarantee, but if you would have done your prehab properly, you might have avoided that. Am I going far with that?
No, there is a caveat with that, because I'm seeing kids that are 8, 9 years old going to personal trainers, which is absolutely crazy, because they're not even close to growth plate development or muscular development or anything like that. There is a balance. And yes, if you are going to play a sport, whatever sport it is, then incrementally, as you develop and grow up, you need to put more emphasis on your strength and conditioning. And when I say strength, I don't mean lifting weights and this and that. That's all part of strength and conditioning. I'm talking about training your muscles and functional movement. Okay. Getting the functional movements patterns down. When I train the guys like Gracie and Traxel and all those guys in the off season, okay, probably the biggest weight we ever lifted was 20 pounds. Okay. Everything was functional movement. And I would use those 20 pounds and have them hold them while they're doing a functional movement related to what they do. First baseman Mark Grace going side to side, making that pivot, making a stretch, that type of thing. To me, that if you're looking for a strength and conditioning program, look for one that focuses on that and not just weight training in itself. And that in itself leads to a lot of problems when you're overloading kids that aren't developed yet. That would be my word probably to parents as they're trying to get their kids developed to whatever point they want them.
Boy, we brought that. I'm thrilled that you brought that up. And what a way to close the show. Because again, that was so important to understand, because that's a big question with weightlifting. John, can't thank you enough, man.
No, thank
I know
you.
you're in beautiful Arizona. You got great weather there.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. That's John Fierro. Okay. I'm Pete Caliendo. Remember, September 11th, honor it. Don't forget it. Always remember it. God bless everybody. Don't forget also, if you can, go to YouTube, Peter Caliendo, subscribe, hit the big red button, helps us get the show out. Cannot thank you enough. Special thanks to our producer, Brian Crock with the Lineup Media Group. Of course, special thanks again to John Fierro, my good friend, Italian-American. Special thanks to all our listeners in the U.S. and around the world. God bless you all. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next show.
Thank you.